Godly, my friend, godly. So check this out in Genesis chapter 2. We see the Sabbath first mentioned in creation week. Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 and 3 say God created the seventh day, he created it as a day of rest, and he sanctified it. Now we see the Sabbath mentioned between Genesis 2 and Exodus 20, but here's the fourth commandment. And notice the very language here. The Bible is very specific in its language. It says, keep the Sabbath holy. Why? Because God made it holy. We cannot make anything holy. We can keep it holy by God's grace, but we cannot make it holy. Many people decry the Sabbath as being some form of legalism because people like me preach the Sabbath. But when you look at the verses, and you look at the Bible proof, the Sabbath actually shows salvation by grace. How do I figure that? Again, because it says, keep it holy. We can't make it holy. We can only keep it holy by God's grace. Why do we keep the Sabbath? Because God is a creator. And anytime you see creation in the Bible, it alludes back to creation week, to the Sabbath. Because the Sabbath was the cherry on top, the crowning creation of creation week. Because God knew that we needed a day to rest and think about just Him, even in paradise. Now here in Deuteronomy chapter 5, it says, keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it. And notice the reasoning down here in verse 15. It says, because you were a slave in Egypt, and God brought you out of that slavery. Now when you look in Romans chapter 6, the Bible, the Apostle Paul, actually uses slavery as a symbolism for sin. And God's reason here in Deuteronomy 5 for asking us to keep the Sabbath is because He brought us out of that slavery of sin. In Exodus chapter 20, it's because He's the Creator. So every time you see God declaring Himself to be the Creator and Redeemer, it is a direct call back to the Sabbath commandment in Deuteronomy chapters 5 and Exodus 20. Here, notice Revelation 14, 6 and 7 actually quotes from the fourth commandment and calls it a part of the everlasting gospel. Why is it part of the gospel? Because it shows that we cannot save ourselves. During the Sabbath hours, we cease from our works, as Hebrews 4 says, and we concentrate on God and His works and what He has done for us. That's what the Sabbath is all about. That's what God calls us to do for the Sabbath, is to focus on Him. Because if we focus on Him, then we cease from our works. Then we have victory over sin. And that's why people hate the Sabbath so much, is because they don't want victory over sin. They love sin and not God. So here in Ezekiel chapter 20, God shows the Sabbath is a sign that He sanctifies it. We cease from doing our own works. We don't go to work. We don't go shopping. We don't go to the movies. We don't do our own desires. We prioritize what God wants, just as He commanded here in Isaiah 58. We do what Jesus did. We go to church as His custom was. We do works of mercy. We do works of healing. We do various forms of ministry. We keep the Sabbath because we love Jesus, not to earn anything.